becoming a thing.
It's a thing. It's a thing. Can Oklahoma benefit enough to make a national title run? We'll see. The Oklahoma Sooners are trending for a 4-star wide receiver in the 2026 recruiting class. We'll discuss him coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Oklahoma Sooners are trending for a 4-star wide receiver in the 2026 recruiting class. Norman's own Mason James.
Yeah, and this is not that surprising to me. He's been linked to Oklahoma for a bit. If I'm correct, he's made a lot of visits, and him and Emmett Jones have a very good relationship. And so does Jaden O'Neal with them. So it sounds like he's a wide receiver. Of course, Oklahoma wants him. He's extremely talented, and he's doing a lot of visits. He's taking his rounds and everything. But he had told On3 not too long ago that he's going to probably make a decision sooner or later. And right after he did that, Josh McCuistion from Sooner Scoop dropped a prediction and said that he thinks that Oklahoma has a really good chance of landing him. John, when I watched this film, man, I think the kid has an opportunity to be special. 6 foot, 160. He has a natural ability at route running. He's definitely a top 250 player. I think the consensus composite has him at like 170-ish range. So he's not bad, and he's considered a, pretty solid wide receiver. A lot of schools want his services, which I always like looking at the offer sheet. The offer sheet tells you a lot, especially if it's a school that does well with wide receivers, and he's got some schools on there from Penn State, Oregon, Tennessee, A&M, Texas, Michigan State, Kansas, Florida, Baylor, Arkansas, Alabama, Arizona, Missouri, Washington, Kansas State, Notre Dame, Oklahoma. So he's got a good list. The question is, can Oklahoma seal the deal?
Yeah, that's an elite list of recruiting offers. And the Texas offer just came in, the last couple of weeks.
Yes.
And so, the buzz around Mason James is continuing to grow, and Oklahoma's still in a really, really strong position to land. And he looks like a guy that we talked about, a gamer like John Mateer. Mason James looks the same way. You watch him play, and he's a very competitive player. It's not just, hey, I'm wide open, I can catch the wide open ball. It's, I can make the contested catches. I can fight for my open space. I can battle through contact. I can make people miss after the catch. He's a very, very competitive football player, and someone who you can line up on the outside because of his speed. You can line him up in the slot because of his quickness, and he's going to be able to do a lot of damage in multiple ways for you.
Yeah, and he's OK Prep, which is, of course, I'm always part of the OK Prep agenda. I would like to see more OK Preps at Oklahoma. The Sooners missed out on Caden Jones, the legacy, who decided that he wants to, make his own path. And instead of going to Oklahoma, he's going to Oklahoma State, which totally get it. Totally understand that he doesn't want to follow in his father's footsteps. Some kids want to do their own thing, and I respect it. I like that Mason James is an OK Prep, and we have a really good opportunity because, again, I don't like Oklahoma players leaving the state, especially really, really good ones, if you can avoid it. And in this circumstance, he's considered, like in some spots, the number one player in the state of Oklahoma. And so if that's the case, Oklahoma needs to go ahead and seal this deal. That way we've got a guy in state that we can hang our hat on and then leverage him to be able to, do some additional peer recruiting, which is, what we all like to see.
Yeah, right now, the only wide receiver Oklahoma has committed is Daniel Odom, the 4-star prospect out of Florida. And it looks like out of Florida or California. Now I feel like I'm making it up.
Florida. He's California. Because
I don't know why
he's friends with Jaden O'Neal. They played as a little league together.
My fault, everybody. Forgive me.
Happens to the best of us.
I don't know who I was thinking of when I was thinking Florida. But yeah, so far, Oklahoma is just trending for a lot of really good offensive players. We'll see what quarterback ends up being. I mean, Jaden O'Neal is still committed to Oklahoma, and he's taking some visits. Daniel Odom's taking some visits, and it makes me a little bit curious. Has Brent Venables softened a little bit on his no visit policy? Because I feel like we're seeing more and more of this cycle and last. Could it be the evolving nature of Brent Venables? I don't know. But to have Mason James trending your direction, it helps answer some of the questions at wide receiver if things were to turn with Jaden O'Neal and Daniel Odom.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And it's gotten a little slower on the recruiting side. No, we're going to talk about that here in the next segment, really in breaking it down. But having Odom there, and then Jaden O'Neal, adding Mason James, which there was a picture, if I'm correct, of all three of them together when they did the visit. What was that? At not Future Freaks, it was the junior day back in January. Yeah. You having a picture with all of them together, obviously we know Jaden O'Neal, ever since he's committed, he's talked about, bringing in more recruits. He's been heavy on the recruiting side himself because he wants to play with the best. And that's of course, a major plus. You want your quarterback to be trying to find the guys specifically. And then Jaden O'Neal's also doing a lot of traveling. He's going to be doing a bunch of visits. And granted, we're talking about Mason James, but for Jaden O'Neal, I totally understand why he's doing these visits. And I actually understand why even Brent Venables is probably like, hey, I can't be mad at you. Because initially when he was going to come in his class, they told him that he was the only one at the time. Well, Seth Luttrell's gone. And we had 3 quarterbacks transfer out. You did bring in one, and you bring in 2 of them, and you did bring in a freshman, but you kind of need another quarterback, right? You lose Brendan Zerbrug, you lost Jackson Arnold, you lost Steele Wazzle, right? So you kind of need an additional just in case, because you're probably going to lose another quarterback out of the portal as well. And if that's the case, there's a chance you could lose 2. So you're going to probably need 2 quarterbacks in this class, and that was what Brent Venables had, in conversation have said. He would like to add a second one to this one. More so, it's a lot cheaper to get a quarterback as a true freshman than it is getting them from the portal, which is kind of odd if you really think about it, but it's really true. Freshmen are a lot cheaper, especially now that we're in the salary cap league. But we don't know where that's going to go because the man in charge is going to have to make some decisions on how he wants to proceed forward.
Yeah. Hey, so where does Oklahoma turn now that Caden Jones is off to Oklahoma State?
Man, that's a tough one. Look, I don't think the Jonathan Hatton recruitment is over yet. I think that they have him in too high of a regard to quit. And I've actually heard a couple insiders make mention of hinting on that they don't think that it's over and it's probably not going to end until actual signing day. So hold out a little hope on that. You had, was it Riley Morris, who is committed to Baylor. He's came and did a visit. And Oklahoma's got a bunch of visits coming up in June, throughout all of June for a lot of OVs. So when those official visits hit, especially when we get closer to that, we'll definitely dive into list and everything that I have compiled already myself from all the social media posts. But there's a good amount of skills position guys on there. The Future Freaks had a lot of running backs. I'm going to tell you that. Running backs and wide receivers back at the beginning of March. So for Oklahoma, there's going to be a good pool of players that they're going to go after. Let's just put it that way. I just don't know who exactly are the ones that they're going to be like laser focused on, but there is a good group of backs that they're going to be definitely throw their name in the hat of. Yeah.
Just got to land Mason James. That'll be a good start. We don't want to see another big time prospect out of Norman go out of state and leave the Oklahoma Sooners high and dry like Charlie Kohler or some others. So let's not do that again. But what's up with Oklahoma's recruiting? Why does it feel like it's kind of slowed down, sluggish? We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.